What's up, folks? We'll wait for some people to go ahead and come on in. I know I'm going live a little bit earlier, but I haven't really been feeling the best this weekend. Been a little under the weather, so I figured, let me just get it out of the way now. But yeah, we're gonna talk about some stuff today, and hopefully you guys get something out of it. I'll give full disclosure here. This is probably going to sound a little bit tinfoil hatish. I usually try to keep things, pretty grounded. But from what I'm seeing here, I think there's something bigger at play regarding the monetary shift with our system. And kind of looking at these puzzle pieces, it's pretty wild, right? What's up, guys? What's up? So, what do I think? There's been a lot of talk about the BRICS nations, right? I had always, there are several content creators out there who have touched on geopolitical events and accelerants, right? I've touched on it. Vel has touched on it. Kurt has touched on it. Crypto 901 has touched on it. I could go down the whole list of content creators or information conveyors, even Zach Rector and many others who have kind of looked at the landscape regarding geopolitical conflict and how they could serve as accelerants regarding the ushering in of the new monetary system that we'll likely see in the not so distant future. Now, what's interesting about this is when you look at the conflict that arose between the United States and Russia, and the sanctions that were imposed via SWIFT to essentially blockade Russia out of the system regarding cross-border transactions, etc. Due to the conflict with Ukraine, crypto became the epicenter of that, right? And I thought it was strange that Stellar and Bitcoin were at the center of this, especially when it came to humanitarian aid and relief, right? People were actually sending donations to Ukraine in the form of cryptocurrencies, right? It turned into a situation where it was, bad Russia, and they were essentially demonized in the mainstream media. But what I always told folks that I found interesting was that if you look at the G20 and the members, China, Russia, and the United States is sit on, they're a part of the same group organization, right? Which means at some point they're going to have to conglomerate with one another and come to the table and sit down regarding monetary issues. So I had always said, I wonder how deep the conflict really is between nations that are serving on the same group organization boards, right? But whatever, just theorization and speculation. Then something that had been touched on before was, and I'm not the first one to say this, right? I actually did a post on Twitter the other day regarding Goldman Sachs and BRICS, right? There's actually a video about it that me and Kurt were talking about that we saw, a little while ago, where they were kind of detailing the history behind the BRICS nations and how Jim O'Neill had a hand in orchestrating and creating what is now known as BRICS, which is Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. Now, what's even more interesting about this is that Gary Gensler is a long-term Goldman Sachs man, okay? When you start looking at the regulatory players who have cycled in and out of Goldman, and you look at the conflict that was seemingly engineered, because see, this is where we're gonna go with this. All right. the whole narrative in the mainstream media currently regarding BRICS is that not that they're hostile towards the United States, but that they're working with Saudi Arabia and other countries in a concerted effort to essentially devalue the US dollar, right? The petrodollar obviously being one of the main centers of this. And the trade that these countries are doing locally with their own currencies, right? Absent of the US dollar. Now, what's strange about all of this?
New text message from
Jesus Christ, man. I'm like, man, I don't know why people do this when I'm doing a live. Like, go away. All right. If you know I'm on a live, stop texting and calling. All right. But anyways, what's really interesting about this is that I'm going to tie this into ISO 20022 implementation and institutions, right? So the newest craze is November 19th, obviously, right? Everyone's like, oh my God, the CBPR plus Target 2, they're going to go live and, we're going to be millionaires, blah, 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 right? Okay. That's fine, right? It's fine to have hopium. It's fine to believe that, I guess XRP is going to go to $25,000 this November. I'm being sarcastic, but what I will say is this, right? What you have to examine here is the correspondent relationships associated with the institutions that are using messaging to facilitate cross-border transactions and remittances, right? Goldman Sachs is one of the major hitters regarding CBPs and remittances, which are essentially correspondent relationships that are contractual, that lock in other countries into a Nostro Vostro like relationship. Now, watch where I'm going with this. What if, and this is just theorization, but this is something that has been on my mind for a while. Everyone's so hyped up about the messaging layer that they're forgetting the correspondent layer has to essentially be replaced by something in order to see the direct interoperability between crypto, blockchains, and DLT and fin messaging systems, right? What do I mean by that? I mean that right now with Nostro Vostro using 27 trillion plus in fiat in order to transmit those payments, they're not using a blockchain environment to transmit payments alongside fin messages simultaneously. But we have touched on this before in the whiteboard videos that ultimately that's likely going to be the end goal. And then obviously DallyPay came out after I did the whiteboards. It stated, yeah, we're working with small and medium institutions in order to enact a system where financial messages would interoperate with crypto and blockchain on the XRP ledger specifically, right? So I wasn't too far off target with that. But remember, I had said when we talked about November last year, and everyone was like, hey, is there going to be movement for sure? And I said, there's a few things that have to happen. I said, number one, you need lawsuit resolution, regulatory clarity, legislation, and classification for digital assets. Without that, you're likely not going to see anything, especially in a system where Nostro Vostro is still being used with smart contract technology alongside fin messaging, right? They have to migrate away from that environment where they're using. See, when people heard David Schwartz and Brad Garlinghouse talk about trap capital, walled gardens, blah, 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 people adopted those sayings that were content creators and they used them as buzzwords without really elaborating on what this means, right? What it means essentially is that you're not going to see a situation where those countries are going to have pre-funded accounts with fiat using traditional fiat in pre-funded accounts that are Nostro Vostro to transmit money between one another. The catalyst behind this would ultimately be a lack of trust between countries regarding cross-border payments and remittances, right? Now, here's the thing. Because those Nostro Vostro relationships are so valuable to the top institutions that are American based, most of them, that handle the largest volume of cross-border transactions. That basically means you have to see a situation where the institutions themselves are going to benefit by migrating away from correspondent relationships. Now, how does this tie into what we're seeing now? Well, remember a few years ago when I was doing videos, I touched on the fact that I had always believed that you would see exchanges come under attack, right? I didn't name any specifically, right? I just said exchanges in general. We know, there's folks like B-Rush and others, even Kurt, who have touched on Binance even more than I did. I'm going to be honest. I could have cared less about Binance. But with that being said, they also play a pivotal role in this as well, because they're one of the world's largest, they are the world's largest decentralized exchange. So with that being said, you're seeing it happen now. Like I said, I was a lot more ambiguous when I touched on it because I didn't name anyone specifically, but I knew with the infrastructure that they had regarding those decentralized exchanges and knowing that the banks didn't have it, that ultimately you would see an environment where if they were going to replace the correspondent system with crypto, DLT, and blockchain, then they would need to control it. And they would need to control the mechanisms that housed off and on ramps in order to facilitate this stuff, right? Meaning, AKA, the banks are going to go and hijack these folks by way of their regulator friends and friends in Congress to deem these things unsafe so that they can take control over them. And on top of that, you have cryptocurrency custody mechanisms that they want control of as well before they implement this, right? So it would make sense that you'd see a situation where folks like Ripple are acquiring companies like Medico, or you'd see situations where major banks are buying or acquiring companies that are similar to Medico, right? And deeming these exchanges unsafe, right? Look at the situation with Binance and Hamas, where they're like, oh, Hamas is terrible. And obviously anyone who's killing innocent civilians on either side is terrible. But, they're pushing this narrative that the whole reason this happened is because of cryptocurrency and, using illicit funds and laundering them through Binance is what allowed them to attack. Well, I'm going to tell you a quick story, right? Sometimes things aren't what they seem. And sometimes, without saying anything definitively, you will see certain governments and their allies fund and create groups and then send in operatives to murder their own people, essentially, under the guise of creating, under the guise of terrorism, create self-engineering conflict so that they can essentially come in and implement something that's going to benefit them in the long run. Case in point, the story, I don't know if I did it on YouTube, but I talked about this on Twitter, where I was in that region of the world and I had an African friend who I was deployed with, who told me, he said, we had a conversation about Libya, and he said, I'm from Africa. I'm from over here. And he said, when Muammar Gaddafi was in power, I'm not saying he was perfect, but the region was a lot more stable. And one thing about people in Africa, they understand who their natives are to that region. There were murders that I guess happened in Libya. I wasn't privy to it. He was telling me about it. And he said that there are a lot of innocent civilians being murdered. And there was a media narrative after Gaddafi obviously came out with the one Africa currency backed by gold rhetoric. They couldn't have that. So these folks who were killing allegedly in Gaddafi's name weren't quite who people thought they were. And he said the locals, the dialect of the native tongue that these guys were speaking, they could speak it. He was like, but they didn't sound native to the area. And people thought that that was strange. Like, wait a second, you speak the language. You don't sound like you're from Libya. Your dialect is totally different from the one that's native. It would be the equivalent of a quote unquote terrorist organization coming into Puerto Rico. Let's say let's say the Dominican Republic, right? Because they're not a part of the US. Let's say I was a dictator there, right? And suddenly military operatives were murdering innocent civilians over there under my, direction. But the folks that were doing it sounded like they were from Guatemala, like they weren't Dominican, but they were trying to pass it off as Dominican forces are doing this essentially because I ordered it. You see where I'm going with this? Those were outside operatives sent in, not under the guise of Gaddafi, but another government to engineer conflict, to give an excuse to the then Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, and President Barack Obama to authorize NATO essentially to go over there and kill him, to stop him from permanently damaging the United States monetary system, right? So I say that to say, is that what's going on here? I don't know, right? And I can't even confirm or deny that that's what happened with Libya. But it was interesting to have someone from Africa's perspective on what Libyans were witnessing and saying, this isn't Gaddafi doing this. What are you doing? Like, don't persecute him. He's not the one ordering these killings. These people aren't even from here. So is this what you're seeing with Hamas in Israel? I'll say this, anything's possible, but it would make sense. It would make sense, in my opinion, that in order to migrate away from correspondent banking, before you did it, you need control of the railways and the trains essentially that are running on them, so that you could gain some sort of a institutional monopoly before it happened, right? Like, so if I were nefarious in nature, I would absolutely start a conflict to draw people's attention away, because I wouldn't want people getting rich off of it if I want my exclusivity. And then I would start acquiring companies that did custodianship for digital assets in exchanges. And then what I would do is I'd have my buddies, I would engineer the conflict and use the conflict to usher in regulations for the off and on ramps to that infrastructure. And then once we had those regulations established, we would have first dibs essentially to go in and acquire the assets after we had our buddies in Congress pass the laws and our regulatory friends pass the regs, so that we could get a one up essentially. And then we acquire our digital assets, and then whatever global public liquidity pools would be associated with, number one, incentivizing us financially to contribute to them, and number two, work in correlation with arbitrage and CBPs and God knows what else, then I would also want control or a monopoly over that situation as well. So what you're likely going to see here, and take this with a grain of salt. I'm not an official financial advisor. This is not financial advice whatsoever, but this is just my perspective, and my perspective tells me what you're going to see is exactly what I've always kind of thought, that you'd see conflict come, you'd see them tie the conflict in the crypto, you'd see the tie-in to the crypto regarding the conflict be a catalyst to usher in regulations to demonize it, and then you'd see the utility-based assets not be deemed crypto, right? So like the ones that are going to be solving real-world problems will fall into another category, and that's where they're going to screw a lot of people up, because you're likely going to see a scenario where the general public will see Elizabeth Warren and these guys come out and say, crypto's terrible, and they'll sell it, and they'll say, aha, it's a scam. And then they'll sell their XRP, they'll sell their XLM, their XDC, their HBAR, their Quant, and say, these are bad cryptocurrencies. And then when you see the regulations classify those as utility-based assets, and then unbeknownst to you, institutions jump in out of nowhere and start acquiring it, you're going to be like, hey, well, oh shit, Quant's at over $1,000, XRP's at like 100 plus, like what, I sold mine. And you know what Elizabeth Warren and those guys are going to say when they get questioned about it? Oops, sorry, we forgot to elaborate. Those utility-based assets aren't really cryptocurrencies. They're digital payment assets attached to payment networks. So that's a little bit different. Sorry, we're sorry we tricked you and you sold your prospective fortune off for pennies on the dollar, but that's not our problem. You should have paid attention more and got the hint, but you didn't. And that's likely what you're going to see happen. They've already engineered, they've fought it. They've had the SEC and their regulatory bodies attack this stuff. They're losing the fight. Now you're seeing a situation where they've ushered in conflict to give a justification for the use of digital assets and networks and blockchains in correlation with messaging systems. They're going to use humanitarian reasonings, regarding war-torn countries to send relief aid, because these countries' governments can't be fully trusted. So instead, everyone will get a blockchain address or wallet ID or some shit like that, and they'll be able to send it to you instantaneously and circumvent, any corruption that may be had by your government to stop you from getting your money that they sent in the form of relief aid in billions of dollars. And look, man, when this happens, right? When you see the conflict, coming, to a halt, when you see the real estate market crash because it's unsustainable, and you see all of these things taking place, and you see the attack on Binance, get to its peak, and these guys essentially, you see a situation where the market, the crypto market, that is, tanks, because there will be another tank. When they go after Binance, and that's the thing. Me and Kurt have been talking about Tether for a long time, about this being a catalyst, essentially, to bring everything down temporarily, because that's going to happen. That's the whole reasoning behind this whole Hamas USDT, which is Tether situation, and Binance. They're going to use that as a catalyst to take Tether down, which artificially props up the value of Bitcoin. They're going to tank them. Watch this. They're going to tank the freaking market. Everyone's going to panic. You're going to see XRP. Forget about it. That's going to drop significantly. And then the Bitcoin ETFs are going to get approved right after they do that. It's going to be doom and gloom and woe is me, and I got to sell because I don't want to lose any more money. And they're saying crypto's bad, and we don't know what's going on with regulations, and they're going after Tether, and we're screwed, not realizing that they just want to control the off and on ramps. They're going to I don't know if they usher USD Tether out of existence, but I can tell you what they will do. They will attack it and crash the market with it temporarily. USD Tether will be used as a sacrificial lamb, essentially, to drive the price of Bitcoin down temporarily. Now, when you see this crash happen, don't be panicked by it. All right. This is not real. Okay, folks, it's temporary. They're going to do this to scare the crap out of you. Be ready for it. All right. And be ready to hold. All right. No, not just hold, be ready to hodl. Okay. Because that's what you're going to have to do. All this research, all these videos I've done, all the stuff Kurt's done, everyone in the HDAO community, all across the crypto space, it's going to come down to this moment prior to the regs and legislation being implemented, right? The first portion of it, which is likely going to be the exchanges and then the stable coins, is going to be the scariest, because that's when they're going to likely take Tether down. But you cannot lose focus here when that happens. You have to stay the course, ignore it. Okay? That's the best advice I'm going to give you. If you're squeamish, if you're emotionally, I'm trying to think of a nice word to say. If you're emotionally sporadic and news and things gear your emotions to a point where you're likely going to sell, ignore it. Don't look at mainstream media news when this happens. Ignore it. Okay? Ignore it. Don't pay attention to it. All right? That means you got to get off Twitter and not watch the news on TV for a month or two. You do it. All right? Because that's what they're going to use to program you into a fearful mindset to get rid of those assets. Why do you think you're hearing more and more about these organizations? And look, there are some, I'm not saying everyone's doing it, but you have folks out there that are accepting certain cryptocurrencies for payments. All right. Don't let them trick you. Okay. They're going to do their best. You have to stay strong because it's coming. All right. It is coming. And I have a feeling this whole de-dollarization narrative that was started by BRICS was a slick way for the United States to essentially use a global conglomerate outside of our country to usher in a narrative to scare people into thinking we're going to be doom and gloom forever. The dollar's never going to be worth anything anymore. And that's going to be the catalyst essentially for them to back the US dollar by something tangible, release the capital that's being held in Nostro Vostro account. Because here's the thing, and I've always said this, you will not see a situation where they release quote unquote trapped capital in the tune of trillions into capital markets and the dollar's worthless. Do you know how stupid that would be? Oh, we're in a hyperinflated environment. We'll just take this 27 trillion in fiat and release it back into the markets while we're being flooded with US Treasury bonds. That makes no sense. Don't believe that. All right. Now, do we go to a gold-backed standard? I'm not sure what happens, but something tangible at some point is going to have to be associated with the US dollar. I think they all know this, and I think this was all engineered, and I don't think there's a true conflict between the United States and BRICS regarding de-dollarization. I think it's all planned. I think it was all self-engineered by our country in order for them to get things in play, absorb the infrastructures, absorb the exchanges, the custodianship mediums, get themselves ready, have their regulatory and legislative buddies pass things that are in favor of them, get people out of the market by demonizing crypto. Instead of just saying what it is up front, they're going to fool you and make you think that all crypto is bad. And then they're going to deem the assets that you're in that are utility-based useful in the form of digital settlement assets. And then that's when the institutional acquisition comes once the ETFs happen. You're going to see all of this stuff likely happen prior to the BTC ETF approval. So it's going to get real rocky real fast. It's going to be moving at hyperspeed, folks. Like, you're going to be like, oh my God, you're going to be inundated like with constant negative and some positive news. Like, you're not going to know which way to look up because it's going to get crazy. Okay. So all of that I'm saying, like I stated earlier, is likely going to happen before they approve a Bitcoin ETF. Now, once all the doom and gloom happens, the markets are cheap, because here's what you have to remember. The institutions do not want to pay top dollar for things. All right. This is all planned. What do you think has to happen? And see, this is the weird part about the lack of understanding within the space, when you have people putting out this narrative that, oh, well, no, you don't have to hold Bitcoin, regarding an ETF. Well, listen, all right. You may not have to buy Bitcoin directly to participate in the ETF, but the institution that's launching it has to hold the asset. That's the whole purpose. You cannot have a bank or an institution launching an exchange traded fund based on a digital asset that they don't even own. That doesn't work like that, which means if you got over 8 to 10 Bitcoin ETFs out for approval and review right now, those institutions that have submitted those applications are going to have to go out in the wild and buy it. Do you think they're going to buy it at $30,000 a pop to establish an ETF? Hello? No, they're not. That's never going to happen. They're not going to go out there and pay top dollar in the market. They're going to manipulate the market and crash the hell out of it and then buy it when it's at like 5,000 or maybe even lower. So, with that being said, I'm telling you guys this because it's a cautionary tale and it's a warning to be ready for what's getting ready to come. Because while everyone's looking over here like, oh, shiny victories for Ripple and Bitcoin ETFs, you have to remember this Binance situation is going to play a major factor in this regarding the absorption of exchanges and the crashing of USDT to crash Bitcoin purposely to allow the institutions who want the ETFs to acquire Bitcoin cheaply. And I wouldn't be shocked if one of the other ETFs that gets launched in the not so distant future is an XRP ETF. Now, I may or may not have had a little birdie kind of put that in my ear. I'm not going to say the name, but it would make sense. If Nostro Vostro accounts are capital owned by banks, how does that factor into the bigger plan? Government is going to take it and reallocate. Private sector company. Well, what you would see happen. So with Nostro Vostro, right? Think about it like this. The banks, okay. So I got to really explain this. It's not really the banks, right? So I have always said that one of the main attractions regarding XRP for me was foreign exchange. With that being said, you have to look at what foreign exchange is and how it's essentially how it correlates with Nostro Vostro. What happens is that capital that's sitting in those accounts is custodied by the banks, but the owner of the account would likely be a broker or a set of brokers, right? So brokers are the ones, because a bank doesn't go out there personally and absorb the risk of foreign currencies, right? If you were in the space that me and what's his name, Bob Way had, we had like a 45-minute discussion about this alone, right? What happens is brokers go out and they acquire foreign currencies and they custody it with a bank, right? And then they facilitate foreign exchange with those accounts, absorbing the day-to-day risk and volatility of foreign currencies, right? So what you would likely see happen in a situation like this, where there's a narrative being pushed that the US dollar is terrible and no one trusts it anymore and no one wants to trade in it, is that ultimately you'd have to do something to restore trust within the currency, right? Which means, I don't know this for certain, but you could see a situation where it's backed by gold, right? There have already been bills introduced by Congress regarding going back to a gold-backed standard. And you know what? It would be okay if they did that and got away from the money printing and the hyperinflation, because if US banks are responsible for the volume, for the highest volume of cross-border transactions via the correspondent relationships, they can acquire the XRP that's going to be used to facilitate that, take control of the global public liquidity pools if we get XLS 30D passed, and then start engaging in that arbitrage and using those financial incentives, you understand, to put money back in their pocket. And now they have a monopoly essentially on an asset that's going to allow them to replicate the same model, right? They're still going to be making money off fees. They're still going to be making money off arbitrage. How much more? I don't know. But that's what I see happening. That capital can't be liquidated and thrown into capital markets when it's worthless. It wouldn't make, to me, it wouldn't make sense to do that, right? What do I think about Link? Well, I mean, Chainlink is going to be used. So, I mean, how much is it going to go to? Have I looked at the numbers? Have I sat down and done quirky price predictions and theories? No, I have not. And I'm not going to. But is it going to be an asset that's used? Absolutely. No problem, Clayton. Yeah, so that's kind of what I see happening here with all of this, right? I think, like I said earlier, that this whole thing was self-engineered by the U.S. in correlation with BRICS. I think they all sat down at the table behind the scenes secretly and said, okay, we're going to go away from this system, but people don't accept change well. You know, we have people storming the Capitol building. You know, a lot of folks didn't want to take the vaccine. How are we going to essentially go off of a correspondent system, still fill our pockets, and convince them that CBDCs and stablecoins are a good thing? Well, I don't know. Why don't we murder a bunch of kids and babies, and then, you know, when we, you know, let the dust clear from these war-torn regions, we can use stable coins and CBDCs as a form of relief effort, or relief aid, excuse me. Don't say our government isn't capable of it. And you know, I look, I'm not saying any branch or any organization specifically, but stuff like that happens. Why are you accumulating currently if they're going to drop lower? Well, I mean, that's all based on your strategy and what you believe, right? Me personally, I hypothetically haven't bought crypto in over a year. So, I mean, and the reason behind that, and I can't even confirm my whole digital assets, but if I did, I would have bought them early because you don't know what's going to happen with these exchanges. You already have banks telling folks, Chase Bank is already saying, look, if you bank with us, we're not going to allow you to purchase crypto with our accounts. And if you don't like that, then you can go find yourself another bank. Now, in a time like this, where we're this depressed economically and banks are insolvent and closing down hundreds of branches, each bank worldwide, why wouldn't they value you as a customer? Why would they be that dead set on telling you, well, screw you. You can go. We don't value your loyalty. We don't care if you've been with us for 30 years. Go find yourself another bank. You can't purchase this stuff. Yet their parent company, JP Morgan, is out here using crypto and DLT and blockchain to their benefit. Freaking trading OTC derivatives with it. Using the Onyx blockchain settler and the JPM token. Come on, man. That's why I didn't wait, hypothetically, if I owned and purchased digital assets. I got that out of the way a long time ago, hypothetically, because I wasn't going to play those games. And the next thing you know, a bank's telling you, sorry, you know, you can't buy this, or how Bitrue did. Oh, we can't allow US customers anymore. I'm telling you. So you can wait and try to catch it when it's all the way at the bottom. But I have a feeling that when that happens, the buy orders that are already likely going to be placed in advance, because you got to think, it can't happen the same way now because banks technically aren't supposed to be on there doing that, right? But let the regulations for stable coins, digital asset classification, and all that good stuff get passed. You had better believe banks and institutions are going to have advanced buy orders on those exchanges. Oh, and by the way, they'll probably own them. So you're not going to have priority on that exchange regarding those order books. They are. Meaning they're not going to allow you to freaking buy in a crash that big because they did this for themselves. Don't screw around, folks. I'm sitting here telling you. Messy Leo, well, the Black Swan already happened. If you don't call over 1,000 Israeli citizens and God knows how many Palestinians dying, and under the course of a week, a Black Swan, coupled with the fact that people can't even afford to buy homes anymore, coupled with the fact that I mean, look, there's so much crap going on right now that we're already in the Black Swan. People don't realize it yet because the media does a good job at lullabying you to sleep and rocking you to bed. All right. So people only believe what they see in front of them. And look, man, you guys know I like to quote movies. Remember The Matrix? So this isn't real. What is real? How do you define real? If real is simply based off of what you can see, what you can smell, what you can touch, then real is simply what? What did Morpheus say? Electrical impulses interpreted by your brain. I'm just saying, man. The Black Swan is here. You're in it. You're living it. So I'm not going to make this long. You know, I could sit on here and ramble on for 2 more hours, but I really try to keep it short nowadays. But, you know, just remember that, you know, everything is not what it seems. You know, when you look at BRICS and you see this weird narrative on the media that they're all against us and they're, you know, our dollar is going to be worthless and, you know, this, that, and they're, look who created BRICS. Okay. Come on, man. Freaking Jim O'Neill. Man, are we Goldman Sachs? The same Goldman Sachs that Gary Gensler, who headed this ridiculous lawsuit against Ripple and XRP for over 2 years, man. I'm telling you, man. Will there be an updated wealth management team? Yeah, I'll do one. I mean, it's really basic. Regarding wealth management, the best wealth management is passive income generation, right? You want, screw how many millions you have. It's depending on your age, right? If you're 50 and above, you're cool with 5-6 million for the rest of your life. But if you're like my age, you want a passive income generator so that you're constantly drawing in that money, right? Every month. That's the biggest mistake you see people with a few million make, is they go out there without generating passive income and they try to live like celebrities, right? Celebrities do it too. Oh, I got 5 million. I'm going to go buy a Lambo. Why would you do that? Why would you only have 5 million in your pocket and go pay $400,000 to $500,000 for a freaking car? That is the stupidest thing I've ever seen in my life, but people do it, right? Because people are all messed up mentally, man. You know, wealth isn't so you can compete with other people. It's so you can have your time and your freedom. Not put yourself in a situation to where you're a slave again, you know? So wealth management is simple, man. Find someone or find an institution where you can collateralize your assets, take out tax-free loans so that you don't have to pay capital gains, and then draw interest off of your assets. Use that interest essentially to pay off the loan. That's wealth management, right? And that's what everyone should be looking to do. Don't look to immediately take out $20 million when it happens and then have to pay 20 to 35% on capital gains taxes for it. Pay the income tax on the interest that you can generate off of your valuable assets that are likely going to net you. Depending on what this does, you could be looking at $50,000 and above a month. You'd be crazy to sit there and just sell a significant amount. I wouldn't keep any more than $4 million liquid. The rest of my assets would be generating that passive income. Do I believe escalation will happen now as US, China, Russia, all sending military to the Middle East? It's already happened. Like I said, we're already there, man, at this point. You're literally looking at like World War III, but I mean, they're all, look, man, all right, they're all in on this. All right. If you really believe that Hamas just flew over there in paragliders and freaking by foot and sea or whatever the hell else they were doing, and no intelligence agency knew about it, man, you are eating bricks. All right. There's no way you can believe that. Oh, Jake and Max be spitting the truth. And that was from Juanito. Thanks, man. Hey, Jake and Max they're beasts, man. You know, they know their stuff. Israeli let Hamas do it. I didn't say it, you did. You know, one of those things. That I can't answer regarding the Bitcoin ETF. Wisdom hairs, yeah. I know it's goofy too because my hair, it's like just in my goatee, man. Like I don't have gray hairs on my head or like in my beard. It's just like right here. Stupid. I like my gray hairs though. Egypt warned Bibi of the attack. See, that's the thing, man. They knew. They all knew. All right. Would I recommend getting rid of ETH? No, not yet. ETH has an institutional monopoly, man. They're now in the long term. I'd have an exit strategy for Ethereum. Well, I don't know, anyone's DCA or when you got in at officially. But I mean, I tell you what, if you got in at a low price point and ETH goes to, I'd say anywhere from like $6,000 to $10,000, I'd be, That's just me, not financial advice, but I personally would be looking to exit around that range. Well, XRP could drop as low as 11 cents. That was the original support level, the lowest, if I'm not mistaken, when I looked at the charts years ago. After that little mini bull run where it went to like $2. I'm learning that when it becomes available, it will be better to lease your XRP rather than to sell it your time. Well, that's what I was talking about earlier, right? I wouldn't sell it at all. And the only reason I would sell it is if, let's say, hypothetically, I wanted to give my pops, I don't know, like a few $1,000,000, right? And he didn't want to deal with the hassle of having a wallet and holding the asset. He's just like, man, just give me cash. Oh, okay. Well, in that case, then I'll take the hit on capital gains. Like, I wouldn't care at that point, But for me, I'm not going to do it, right? Like, no, hypothetically, because I can't confirm that I even hold digital assets. But if I did, for me, I wouldn't sell it. I would collateralize it, right? Go into an institution because they're going to want to use it. They're going to want it, all right? And they will gladly take it and pay you an interest rate for it. And if you get a loan from the same bank, they'll be likely to look, man. If they look at your portfolio and you got over $20 million sitting in it, they'll give you a straight up $5 million loan. And then imagine the interest that you're going to get on a token. I don't want to throw a number out there, but let's say it goes into a few hundred and above, right? When everything takes off. Look, man, you'd be a fool to just convert it all over to capital or over to fiat, pay capital gains and ride off into no. Like I said, I wouldn't have any more than a few $1,000,000 in USD liquid, and then the rest you'd be paying me every month, and I'd have a CFA, a tax strategist, etc., handling my taxes. I want it done monthly. I don't want to wait till the end of the year. Pay my shit every month. My 35% income tax, because it's probably going to be a lot of money you're making each month. So I'd have that already lined up. And yeah. Dubai? Yep, I considered Dubai as an option for relocation. I'm not even going to lie. I most certainly have. Hypothetically, of course, because I can't even confirm that. But yep, you may see me in Dubai somewhere. I'll be in a few different spots. But yeah, that's all I wanted to come on here and talk to you guys about. Just realize, man, it's all a smoke screen. It's all a game. All right. Don't fall victim to this. You will see a crash before you see takeoff. You will see a crash more than likely before you see Bitcoin ETF approval. And you will see it, like I stated earlier, because no institution is going to want to go out there in the wild and pay freaking $29,000, $30,000 essentially for an asset when they could crash the market with their buddies. And then they know right after. And see, that's the scary thing, right? This is all insider type shit. Because they're going to know right after they crash that price and their buddies pass the rugs, they know what it's likely going to go to. They already know. Oh, yeah, I've been to Dubai 8 times, man. Yeah, I'm very, very familiar with it. When I was active duty, we kept porting in constantly into Dubai. But I liked it a lot. But yeah, keep that in mind. Like I said, it's going to get ugly out of nowhere, but they already know behind the scenes we have control over all of this and we're absorbing the infrastructure. So the same off and on ramps that our buddies are going to regulate for us are the same things that we need control over essentially prior to acquiring the actual digital assets and the custody infrastructure, because then they're going to want you to come see them for custody purposes to do what I just got finished talking about regarding interest, yield, and freaking custodianship and loans, collateralizing your crypto so that they can use it. Like I said, man, I'm not going to humble brag, but there's been some stuff that I've had people fight me tooth and nail on, and I called it, all right? And it may not happen exactly how I'm saying it, but you better believe you're going to see it's going to be very similar to what I'm saying, in my humble opinion. I can't predict that, brother. I don't know I don't know when it happens, right? I don't know how long it takes for the crash to happen or the rebound, right? But I know it's happening. Honest prediction, what do you think it'll be in 3 years? The price? I mean, that's just hard to say, man. I think it'll be significantly higher. I can't narrow it down to like whether or not it depends on the utilization, the supply, the demand, etc. Right? What are they going to be? How much are they going to use it? What's going to be the demand for it in 3 years? What are the addressable markets that it's officially targeting? Right? And that was kind of something that I brought up. You guys are good. I was supposed to be off of here already. But you guys keep sucking me back in. That was one of the things that I touched on regarding market cap on a Twitter space, where Quincy had stated, yes, it matters, but he actually said in my defense, because of how I feel about market cap, that I'm also right as well, that it can be manipulated for worthless assets. Now, here's the funny thing about this, right? What's not being looked at is the fact that market cap itself does not serve as a hindrance to these assets. Not utility-based assets essentially reserved for global scalability, right, and constant use. And the reason why is because more than likely with certain assets, the addressable markets that they're handling are probably going to be way more than what people think the market cap would have to be for XRP in order to see significant price appreciation. I'll give you an example. People are like, oh, well, it'd have to be over $200 trillion in market cap and blah, 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 blah. Okay, well, you know what? There may be some truth in that, right? But here's the thing. If the XRP token is dealing with the derivatives market, which is a multi-quadrillion dollar market and multi-trillion dollar markets globally, that means the addressable market would be more, essentially, than what the market cap would be required to be at to see that significant appreciation in price. So you could see a situation where the utility coupled with the supply and demand for the asset, the problems that it's solving, and then the addressable markets that they're solving the problems in regarding its value could negate a market cap hindrance. Basically, that's me telling you the market cap could probably go far higher than what most people think, right? So that's not there to hinder it. It's there to serve as a reflection regarding the value and coins in circulation regarding the asset. But then there's another portion to this, is that there's likely going to be utility associated with the asset that takes it out of the open market as well. So then that's another catalyst, right? Just something to think about. He said, you just told your people how they're going to take it, but you did not tell them how to protect it. I don't know what you mean by that. As far as protecting it, if you've been a follower of the channel, I've already addressed that. I don't have to beat a dead horse. You guys know what it is. Don't go into anywhere and collateralize anything or give up anything unless you see it in writing that your assets are what? What do I always say, folks? That's right, insured. The halving, I think the halving will be significant. I think that's going to be another catalyst. I forgot to bring that up. Isn't that supposed to be in the spring of next year? Yeah, we all know, Junior. Yeah, we all know cold storage. We've touched on all of that throughout the channel. That guy just might be new, and maybe he hasn't seen the old videos because I hit them all. So yeah. Keita said, I'm just saying, you all don't ask questions about a 401k. Treat this the same. She's absolutely right. Right. And that's kind of the weird thing, right, about it, is that people got into crypto because they wanted to get rich quickly, not understanding that there are bull market cycles sometimes that take 4 to 5 years. You may not see anything, right? It just depends. But now we're entering into a new era where these things are actually going to have institutional demand and usage, right? And acquisition as well. So all you need to do is be patient. You guys don't see me asking anyone really much of anything, right? How many times have you seen me tag David Schwartz and ask him a question? Now, maybe I've made statements, right? or theorizations and tagged them. But, you know, I've had discourse with devs, etc. I'm not asking them, well, what can you see happen? We're all putting our ideas out there on the table. And it doesn't mean we even know everything. It means that we're treating this like an investment, and we're not sitting here chomping at the bit for these things to just blow through the roof, because investments have never worked like that, right? Sometimes you can get in something at the right time, just get lucky, but most of the time it's going to take patience, mental fortitude, and strength, and emotional maturity in order to see your way through this. All right. So that's because you're the man with the master plan. You and a couple of other guys. The honestly is highly appreciated. I appreciate you guys too, man. We all keep each other sane, right? I'm just one guy, right? And like you said, it's me and it's other people. This is why I focus on the aspect of community so much, because we all learn from one another. I've learned stuff from B Rush. I've learned stuff from Kurt. I've learned stuff, even though I don't, rock with them like that. Ted has said a few profound things, right? Lewis has even said, a few profound things as well, even though he's a newbie in the space, right? Folks that I don't even care for, and I'm not, naming anyone specifically, but there are folks I don't even like who have put out good information, right? And I think that's the key here, is that it's not just about one guy. It's not just, about, oh, T knows this. No, it's about all of us, because we can all benefit from one another and learn from one another. Even people here in the comments, even if you don't create content, it doesn't matter, T, do another whiteboard live. I miss those days. I might just do that. It's going to be that would be a long one. That'd be a long one because of what I know now. I know more now than what I knew then when I did the first 3 or 4. So that'd be, like I said, that's one of the reasons I haven't done it, is because you're talking about like a 5 or 6 hour video. Like I'd have to, order pizza, get some drinks, and just literally kick it with you guys for like the entire day. Like, I mean, that's going to take a lot of patience to sit there through that. And I don't want to lose folks, right? Like folks who are new to the space that may not understand how all of that stuff is going to intertwine with one another. That's convoluted. A 5-hour whiteboard. I guarantee you Gary Gensler's MIT courses weren't even that long. So yeah, Bane voice or why you want the Arnold? What are you doing? Number 1, T2 crypto hold, 3 Alpha Neem, 4 Lift Capital. That's the man. Hey, whatever order you have it in, man, it don't matter to me. Everyone has their favorites. And shout out to Mick Alpha Neem, man. Highly, criminally underrated. I mean, even though he has 20,000 subs, he should be talked about more. His content should be shared. They were sharing my stuff before they shared Alpha Neem's. And I was on Twitter. The bigger content creators like Working Money Channel, DAI, Digital Perspectives, and others. And I'm like, man, you guys don't know about Alpha Neem? Dude, Alpha Neem's a goat, man. Hands down. Started watching you with those whiteboards. Okay, so we had someone say, T, it's getting hard to hold on to my assets because I'm in college. I had to sell all my... T, it's getting hard, man. I'm in college and had to sell all my assets because of an emergency. Okay. Number 1, I hate to see that, all right? But here's what I'm going to tell you, okay? If you're in a certain amount of overwhelming debt and you can no longer maintain it, or you have an emergency, that's okay. All right. This was done on purpose. It was done by design to put us in a depressed situation so that we couldn't hold on to these assets. That's what they wanted. And I know that's what they wanted because even during the GameStop and AMC days, they were complaining that people were taking their stimulus checks and they were investing them. They don't want you saving or investing. All right. Like I said, I'm sorry that you had to do that, but here's the good thing about that. All right. Start somewhere. All right. It's still cheap. XDC is still not even a dime yet. XLM is at a dime, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 11 cents. And XRP is in between 48 and 52 cents. All right. I don't care if you can only afford $100 a month in digital assets. This is not official financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. This is simply my perspective. If you choose so after doing your own due diligence and research, you can take my perspective and pair it with yours. But make sure before you do so, you have an understanding of the risks associated with your purchases and the risks associated with the overall crypto market. And with that being said, I'm going to say this unofficially, start slow. If you had an emergency and you've rebounded from it, set a budget and stick to it that you can afford. I don't care if it's $75 a paycheck. You get that XDC because it's the cheapest unofficially, and then you focus on the other assets, right? Your XRP and your XDC, in my opinion, and your XLM should be the three priorities, right? And you just divvy out between the three. Don't think about this as a competition or a sprint, right? You may have potentially 6 months to a year to keep accumulating. I don't know. I hope you do, right? Because I hate to see people priced out of their assets because of stuff like this, right? But if you listen, if you got to, pick up a second shift at your job, if you got to start Ubering on the side or door dashing, get a part-time job, do something, right? All right. What? Of course, people want me to scroll all the way up and read other comments. This is why I never got any other assets beside the one asset. I got my bag. Then I quit buying. Also, donating plasma is a thing too. You can get $120 a week. Just say, oh, okay, yeah. I mean, and look, here's the thing. Okay, and this is what I'm going to say, right? Before I end this, some people didn't overinvest. All right, you have to understand. I've been saying for a while now that you're going to see a situation where they make things so tight and so hard for people that even if you didn't overinvest, you may have to potentially go in there and take out of your assets, right? I mean, for me, I'm a homeowner, so I have options. I got a great dad too. I'm not gonna lie, who I never go to for anything, but that doesn't mean he won't be in my corner if I need it, right? Because he knows that's how we're made. We don't have a relationship based off using one another. We love one another. But with that being said, aside from that, I was blessed with a good career. So I have to keep that into consideration as well. Everyone may not be where I'm at, and that's not a brag at all. That's just, I'm older. I've been in the IT field going on 16 years, and I've had time to work my way up. So it's one of those things where this guy may not be there. He's in college. He may be a young student. He may be barely getting by, he may have only, at the time, he may have had a set budget and been able to stick to it, but things get more expensive, emergencies happen, etc. So, I mean, look, I told you guys this year alone, hell, man, I had to, thankfully, I had money set aside for it, but I did a CARES Act thing via TSP, and the IRS was like, "Hey, Thomas Gill is $4,600." But I mean, it doesn't matter because I may hypothetically have placed it aside anyways, just in case. But I did pay the initial federal withholding, and then there was the 10% that they take for the exemption, or the 10% that they take for the early withdrawal is exempt. So they're going to have to redo that anyways, because I think they didn't factor that in there as well. But I've had outside of that, even I've spent probably well over $16,000 this year on emergencies, right? And if you don't own a home, and if you don't have the best career at the time, and if you're a struggling student or emergencies keep hitting you nonstop and you don't have the support or the career to be able to afford it, guys, sometimes it's going to get to people, okay? Anyone want to buy a kidney? You're just gonna have stuff like that happen, man. Like I said, I don't dog people because I know what it's like to be there before I got to the level I'm at now. It would take an atom bomb, essentially, at this stage with where I've made it to and the support that I have for me to just be like, oh, like I just can't deal with this, right? Especially you got to think with the equity. Now, I wouldn't voluntarily want to just take an equity loan out in this environment. If I had to, I would, right? I mean, but you got to think most people out here in Western Washington, it's sitting on over $200,000 in equity, man. So it's one of those things where if you have the options like that, if you can, if you have a hardship situation, especially if it's COVID related and you have a TSP or a 401k, that's an option, right? But I'm saying don't beat the people up who don't have that option because we don't fully know their situations. On the way to get some ghost pepper, actually, I'm gonna have my boy Dana send me some. He grows peppers and all that stuff. I messaged him today and said, hey man, send me a care package, bro, and let me know the price. Because I need my spicy stuff, man. I need it. But yeah, man, like that. I'm transparent with you guys and told you about, some of the stuff I went through because I want you guys to know I'm human too, right? Just because I may seem like I have it all together, it doesn't mean that stuff doesn't happen. And every time I have something happen, I got to pay thousands, right? Like the IRS thing is a cakewalk, right? That's only $4,000, but doing a tune-up on the Lincoln MKX and then having to turn around and do the transfer case, shit, man, that was $7,000. That's just one car. That's not counting the tires. That's not counting the tune-up on the Challenger. That's not counting the 2 fuel injectors that I had to do on the Chrysler. That's not counting the fact that I still got to get it repainted because I had a slight fender bender. That's $800. That's not counting the fence rebuild that I had to do. That was, $3,000 plus. That's not count. I could go on and on and on. The plumbing infrastructure that I had to redo because, of the pipes. I had to replace the pipes. Had to get it snaked. Had to replace the garbage disposal. New dryer. You name it. Right. I'm constantly just money. Son need a driver's ed. Here's $600. Like that. I mean, and the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on and on. Right. So, and with all of that, mortgage, taxes, insurance, cable bill, which is freaking almost $400 with everything included. I get it. Like I said, and child support, right? So, I mean, with that being said, like I trust me, my child support ain't cheap, but I mean, with that being said, these things happen, man. All of us are dealing with something. Don't think, because I'm on here doing content that sometimes I'm not like, God dang, man, like how much more money am I gonna have to spend? It happens, man. Sometimes you're gonna have years where you are just like, man, I cannot catch a freaking break. Every time I turn around, something happened. When I got my lawyer, that was like a few $1,000s, right? When I had a family law case a year or so ago, right? I mean, so nothing, like I said, every time I have to deal with something, it's usually a few $1,000s. But with that being said, I will not touch my hypothetical digital assets, but if I had to, I would prioritize which ones I was going to take out of. And if I did it, I would make sure, and this is unofficial, of course, that I targeted the ones that were at the cheapest price, right? And I would make a log of it so that, for tax purposes, you could be covered. Because if it adds to your income, then, obviously they're going to, want to hit you over the head for it. So, I mean, just things to keep in mind. But me, if it came down to touching my digital assets, as irritated as I am with the housing market, like, God damn it, man, excuse my French, but like it irritates my soul that the average interest rate is at like almost 8% right now. And, you know, the median asking price for a home is $500,000+. Like that literally just irritates me, man, to no end. But even with that being said, if it were me and an emergency, like some sort of an atomic bomb hit, and it was like $50,000+, and I just, and I'm like, all right, so this is a lot, you know, to come out of pocket for. At that point, I would not sell my hypothetical digital assets. I would look at some sort of an equity loan at that point, right? And I would have no problem doing it. It would suck temporarily, and this isn't advice at all because everyone's situation is different, but I would rather do that than touch those assets. Now, if I had to touch them, then that's a different story. But in my situation, there is a few options I could explore before I would have to draw from my hypothetical digital assets. So for those who do have those options, make sure you keep that stuff in mind as well and explore your options prior. Like, shit, man. I mean, I got 3 cars, man. Like, what am I? Look, at this stage, if I had to sell one of my cars, I mean, this car literally only has what? I don't know if you guys can see it. 65 something thousand miles. I'd sell this freaking car in a heartbeat, man. Let stuff get bad enough. You can take this car. I still have my Challenger, or vice versa. Sell the other one, right? Hell, I'm okay, and I've considered selling one of my cars just because. Maybe I want to hypothetically get some more digital assets. I can easily, out of this car, I could easily get $15K for it. Like that. 65,000 something miles on it, and it's a 14. Yeah. So somebody would buy, and all the work I do on it, right? All the receipts, proof of maintenance, etc. You know, it's been taken care of. So yeah. Sometimes we have more options than what we think we do, and sometimes people don't have a choice. Either way, you know, let's not beat people up over it, and let's keep in mind that everyone's financial situation is different. Some people may not have the credit, you know, to go out there and get a good credit card for emergencies. Some people may not have the income to handle their emergencies without tapping into their savings. Some may not have enough saved. Some, you know, there's a ton of things, but you know, with that being said, I wish everyone the best, man. So yeah, on that note, I'm going to go ahead. I got to get off of here and go into the store, pick up a few things for meal prep this week. Everyone stay safe, stay blessed, stay healthy, and man, stay stoic. That's the best advice I can give anyone in this market. Stay and remain stoic. All right. Don't get out here in this crypto market making decisions based off of how you feel, because that's what they want you to do. And remember, everything is pre-planned in advance. All right. Love you guys. Signing out.